Hey everybody, welcome back to Tomcat Zone. It's been a while. Um, haven't been playing, so I haven't had any need for making any videos. Since our fifth fleet game finished, I have been working on my Fleet Battles module for Vassal, which is basically a compilation of all the fleets games. And when I say all the fleets, I'm talking second, third, fifth, sixth, and seventh. Have not gotten into any of the Asian uh, fleet battles, fleet games that were created after Third Fleet was created. Um, and that's just because of time. I just haven't had the time to spend to even find them and uh, purchase them or get them on the internet or whatever. But this module that I've built, like I said, is a compilation of all of the original Fleet games into one module. My goal was to create a module that had standardization across the fleet games because, truthfully, I find the module. You go out there, you find modules on Vassal, and other people had done this action or activity before, where they built Sixth Fleet and then they added modern counters, and those modern counters were in there, but you didn't know. It just got confusing. And so with this module, if you go to the Fleets, Victory Game Fleets Facebook page, you'll find it. It's not on the Vassal site at all, but um, with my module, the the module is built with the idea that the Fifth Fleet rules and the Fifth Fleet uh, counter stats are the standard. I like Fifth Fleet. Fifth Fleet was my favorite of all the rule systems. Third Fleet came after Fifth Fleet and they added a few changes, but I wasn't real crazy about the changes that they made. I don't think the changes were necessary, and or they weren't great enough to uh, include. So I've set Fifth Fleet as a standard, which means um, I went then through all of the ships from sixth, third, second, seventh, and I made spreadsheets and I compared them, and I made sure that the spruances based on time in service and what version they were matched across the board. So if you're using a carrier, a Nimitz class carrier, in the Sixth Fleet or in Third Fleet, the carrier should be relatively the same. Only the actual Nimitz is the only one that is different than the other carriers in the system because it was of the time of service, and the newer carriers had more advanced systems. But that being said, um, there are still some rules that you'll need, and they are built into the module now so that you can play Sixth Fleet still, or you can play Second Fleet with the certain things that are required for Second Fleet. So that being said, let's go right to the module here, and we're going to bring up my current battle that we're starting, and this is what this video series is going to be about. We're doing Seventh Fleet, um, World War III, and these are the log files that Scott and I have generated since the onset of the game. And I'm going to start building my videos after. But this first video, I wanted to kind of make it not only a video about our battle, but also a little bit about the new module that I built, just so you guys, if you decide to use it, what you can expect and how it's laid out. So real quickly, I'm just going to kind of go over the components of this module, and then I'll jump into these videos. Just like I finished with Fifth Fleet, it's my goal to have the entire game turn per video, so that all action segments 1 through 6 will be in every video for every game turn. So this video will also reflect game turn 1 of our World War III 7th Fleet game here. Excuse me. This one might be a little bit longer just because I'm doing the tutorial here too with the new module. But anyway, what you'll find up here is the standard controls for any Vassal module with retire and server, and the advance button and the undo button for log files. You're going to find a D10. You're going to find a D6. D6 isn't necessary for Fifth Fleet rules, but I figured I'd leave it in there in case scenario designers decide they want to add a house rule and that requires a D6. I like the versatility of having a couple of dice options there, but you'll notice that they're active dice. When you roll them, they show up in the screen, but then they also show that whatever the result was. So you'll see the dice roll in your communication, the dialogue screen, but you'll also see it on the dice as well. Next is the counter palette. Counter palette is built the same as it was in most Vassal modules for the fleets games that I've seen other people build, with the United States, allies, Soviets, allies. India and China I've isolated. I think actually in the Fifth Fleet module that was out there, and in other modules, China. This has already been done by other people in previous versions of this Vassal module. But I like the idea. It allows for India and China to be representative, because sometimes if you're playing a Fifth Fleet scenario, India might be an ally to the Soviets, or they might be the enemy. So it gives easier. You can find your counters easier instead of going, oh, was India under the U.S. allies or the Soviet allies? It makes it a challenge. Those countries that are definite allies of the Soviets, Algeria, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran, Libya, North Korea, those countries obviously are built into the Soviet allies counter palette. Same with the U.S. allies, Australia, Denmark, France, Germany, Japan. Those countries that are definite U.S. allies are already in there. India and China are isolated just because of the fact that they can be on whomever's side. Neutrals are countries primarily from Sixth Fleets. No other games had neutrals in them that I'm aware of, but Sixth Fleet had neutrals. But that being said, I think I've added other neutrals to the game BZ. Don't know. We're gonna have to figure out what BZ is. CO. Huh. I got to remember what the country is BZ. We'll have to look. It all depends on the game. But going back to my point here, what you'll find is the aircraft that are in the Allies, aircraft that are in the neutrals, they're going to be built as a standard to the Fifth Fleet stats. Okay, and finally, you have your new markers for the game purposes for all fleets. You're going to find under game turn or under game turn track tab a game turn prep level, time of year, the armistice marker, but also a flag for every country if you use the armistice rules and you keep track of what sides, if sides can change. It's kind of cool. A little function there that came from Sixth Fleet that I liked, that I wanted to make sure carried over. Other things you might see in the game that are components that I've added could be airbase. All right. This is the reason these counters are in here, is because, truthfully, if you look at the original Second Fleet map that came in the box, the map that is online, or the map that was in the Vassal module, does not match the original map that was in Second Fleet. So there are bases on the map that was in the original box set that the creator of the new map, the digital map, didn't include or changed names to suit their preference. I couldn't find the original map of Second Fleet, and my scans didn't work out well. So I've used these digital maps that are created. So when you go to do your deployments, you're going to find that Reykjavik might not be on Iceland. It's Keflavik only, but no Reykjavik. So these allow players to add an airbase if it's not named or it's not, you know, included in the map there. So, you know, it's a simple, you know, you can change your name here to Reykjavik, and it puts that there, and then you can change the base CAA strength, and we'll say it's 25 for Reykjavik hypothetically, and boom. So you can put a counter on the maps now that might be for your air bases. And there's one for air base minor, air base major, port, and of course port and air base. And they all have the same function where you can right click them, add the name, add the strength, and then of course as the damage base, put your damage marker on it. So that just is there to make it function across all the maps with the deployment charts as they were originally written. Some players may never use this stuff, but I wanted to let you guys know it's there. You'll find it under US and Soviets. Soviets have theirs as well. You also find that I included the commandos, paratroopers, and Marines of the 6th Fleet for those scenario designers that might want to do a land battle as well, using those functions from 6th Fleet, which I kind of liked actually. The landing the troops. I also like 5th Fleet's rules for taking over bases or landing troops and getting victory points. But this was a cool system from 6th Fleet that you can have battles there on the bases. Another thing I've added is a nuke stockpile counter. It allows for a counter off the side of the map that you can keep logistics about your what kind of no matter what, you know, if you're in playing in 5th Fleet, you can go, okay, my deployment says I have why am I not being able to, hold on a second, I might have to change my side here. Yeah, I'm on US allies. Let's change to there, and then we'll go to solitaire. Okay, now logistics. Well, it's not working. There it goes. Okay, so let's say the your deployment chart says you have 7 nuclear bombs for the particular mission. You can put a 7, or no, excuse me. You can put a 0 of 7 and on your setup, and then you have checkboxes. So when you use one, you just click it and say, hey, just nuked whatever, and boom, you can mark those down. A couple counters work like that. You also have for, in particular, 7th Fleet, which is their SS-22 land-based rockets. You're going to find that the ammunition is there. Same purposes. I think you get 4 depending on the scenario, and then you can, you know, check them off as you use them, and makes it nice little counters for those purposes. Soviet reinforcements for 2nd, 7th Fleet, Soviet mines, of course, objective hexes. I've added these, especially with the larger scenarios. Sometimes it's like hard to remember where you have to get, you know, tankers to, or your amphibious assault ships. I've added these, or you know, if you got to destroy an air base or something, destroy bases. Soviet objectives, and then of course there are Allied objective hexes. You can just put those counters. You might never use them, but they are there in case you wanted them. Nuke stockpile, Allied reinforcements, objective hexes, standard task forces, and cap markers and stuff like that. So those are just some of the counters that I've added that aren't necessarily standard to any one fleet game, but you'll find them in here for your use. The charts table, okay, everything is built on 5th Fleet. As I said, this is a 5th Fleet sequence of play, but I have inserted those rules for 6th Fleet for invasion, or I have inserted those rules for replenishment or whatever it might be by the Fifth Fleet. So if there's a rule function that doesn't really apply to Fifth Fleet, but you need it for Sixth, they are still here. You just have to, draw upon those charts when necessary. But like the combat results table and these functions and rules, these are all built on Fifth Fleet. Combat summary is Fifth Fleet. I did add Third Fleet's torpedo decoys here. I do like that. Air to air, Fifth Fleet stuff, miscellaneous charts. All these miscellaneous charts are either Fifth Fleet based or they are marked accordingly. Like this, actually, the satellites chart is satellites is a function from Sixth Fleet, but I like it, so I made it a permanent part of my game. But the satellites function actually comes off the complete fleet, their house rule, and I've made it part of this module. You roll a die during this random events part of the sequence of action segment or turn one, or AM turns, I should say, and get the results if you have satellite passovers. The mine table is from Fifth Fleet. Your aircraft carrier charts from Fifth Fleet. The weather table is actually built off of, those campaigns that are in the northern parts of the globe. But column 4 is the standard from Fifth Fleet, which if you're playing 5th, 6th, or 3rd, you'd just use column 4. But if you're playing 2nd or 7th, you would use the seasonal and the so all 4 columns, I should say. Your zone charts are built by map. You will notice there's no Third Fleet zone charts here, and that's because there's no Third Fleet maps. Third Fleet counters are in the game, but no Third Fleet maps. I will be introducing that stuff later. It's just taking me time to get what I've done. So, and then there's, of course, tables based on needs for a particular game. The paratroop commando table is from Sixth Fleet, but as a scenario designer, maybe you want to use this function from Sixth Fleet. It's there. Close combat and all these kind of things are all from Fifth Fleet here, as it states in the bullets at the bottom. Subdetection is from Fifth Fleet. I actually am finding problems with this, though, as we play Seventh Fleet, because Chinese subs basically fall under NATO because everything else is Soviet noisy, Soviet and other noisy. Maybe the Chinese could fall under this column for other SN, but me and Scott haven't really thought about that really. But bottom line, he's been using the NATO chart for his side, and of course Chinese subs aren't quiet, at least during the time frame that this, 80s, 90s, that these games were being made. So for that reason, I did add the composite submarine detection table. Someone had asked me to add this on the Facebook page. Here it is, for those that want to use that instead. But for the most part, this is the Fifth Fleet rules. Armistice is from Sixth Fleet and I believe 2nd and 7th. I like Armistice rules. I have tweaked this system to apply to every version of the game. I kind of gotten rid of the things that were oriented just to Sixth Fleet or whatever, but kind of generalized them so that you can use them, the political and the armistice rules. If you're playing Fifth Fleet and you want to apply this, they should function with this table in a Fifth Fleet game. Here's just a tab for all extraneous charts that you might need for 2nd, 6th, or 7th fleets. It all depends on the game you're, the battle you're playing. Again, you're going to use Fifth Fleet rules, but there are functions in those games that need to be in there. So you need your NATO-based victory points charts for 2nd. You need the neutrality chart for 6th. Those charts are here on this tab. You'll find them. Invasion rules, basically the rules for out of 6th Fleet, how invasions work. This document, these pages here, are actually from the complete fleet, but these guys were great enough to put this together already, so I just kind of applied it into my module here so that it summarizes everything in one quick view for all of the games. Unit menus, this is just a tutorial page for that I built for helping people understand my module. If you have a question, you go, okay, how do air units work? If I right click it, what's the purpose of all these little things in the drop down? That's what this page is for. So you can come here and you can go, okay, aircraft, how do I, do air-to-air refueling purposes? Well, the air-to-air refueling flags now hang off the bottom of the counter. You can change the location of where the aircraft came to, whether you put the hex it came from or the aircraft carrier it came from, how surface units work and how their logistics work and how the ammo out, or when you flag them for detection and all that kind of stuff, where the flags post to, and just, it's a help guide here. Unit schematic, terrain, optional rules, 5th and 7th house rules, or 5 to 7 house rules that I've used. And of course the composite sub-detection table. Basically trying to summarize all games in one complete area there. Okay, turn track is the same. As you can see, I've added prep level and time track of year, even though those functions might not play into a 5th fleet campaign. You can still use them. You can still decide, although there's no deployment charts for prep levels for 5th fleet. Time track of year is important for the parts of the globe that can ice over, so that's good. Allied and Soviets, the kill boxes are the same, but I have kind of isolated them by class. This is good when you're tracking victory points and you need to know how many fast frigates you've killed, how many SSs, because they might not be their whole value. Air combat for those that are worth points, or air auxiliary that are worth nothing. And then, of course, non-combatant ships that might not be worth anything, but certainly want them dead, like tankers or amphibious assault ships, or whatever they might be, that don't necessarily, well, no, amphibious assault ships are tankers, oilers, combat supply ships. Things that might be worth victory points to the other guy, but might not mean anything to you in points, except to not allow the other player to get those points. Okay, then we got our standard, task force screens. This is, if you've played any of my other modules, you'll see that they look like what I've done. I've isolated India and China in task force displays for this very purpose, that they might be a third party in the battle. Or if anybody ever wants to do this where they're playing with multiple players and they want to have someone playing India while someone's playing the Soviets and the others are playing the NATO forces, whatever it might be. Options are there. Next, we go to strategic air displays. There's only 2. I thought about adding China and India air displays as well, but truthfully, it gets a little convoluted when it just turned out to be easier to have the green side and the red side. Soviets, ally, NATO separator there, and just have one screen to go to for, even if China or India are isolated to themselves, if they are a ally to the Soviets or an ally to the NATO player, they can go on those charts. It's just easier, instead of having a bunch of chart or windows open to say, okay, I had aircraft over this zone, but Indian aircraft over this zone or whatever. But anyway, unload screens, I added these with a previous version of my modules for 5th Fleet. I carried them over into this just because they're victory point screens. So if you get to an objective hex and you unload amphib salts, unload cargo ships, whatever it might be, and you get victory points based on how many points you earn for that particular victory point objective hex, they're there. Reinforcement charts and pools. These were key for 2nd, 6th, and 7th Fleet. They're necessary for those games that have deployment charts based on preparedness level on the scenarios. The Soviet strategy track is here. This is solely for 2nd Fleet, but you need this here you will find under the Soviets a counter for not the objective hex, but where it is, where Soviet command, Soviet, no, reinforcements, Soviet strategy. So, you know, you'll have your strategy counter there for Second Fleet. Again, not necessary in our game that I'm starting here, but functions that you'll have. Armistice table, you know, your negotiations section, and then your alliances. You can put the flags for those countries under the alliances based on the region, so that you know, if a scenario has a side, could potentially an allegiance could break up, or you know, country could leave the alliance, whatever it might be. Their flags are there, and they can move to neutral or move to the other side. But that's a negotiations chart. Finally, you have this right here, which is your it's a counter palette, but I've isolated it because it's my goal to add to it as I work on this, continue to work on fleets and adding modern units, Virginia class subs, Ford class carriers. There might be stuff in here that has no function in the game, i.e. this M1 Abrams. I'm just playing around with stuff right now, but who knows? Maybe you know, a scenario designer might go, hey, can I get drones? And here you go in the U.S. forces. There's a reconnaissance drone, and whatever the Allies, the Queen Elizabeth aircraft carriers here, the Soviets. Just I add the frogfoots, but like China, the Pacific region is going to become the new hotspot. Obviously, the Cold War stuff is maybe moving to that region now, but for our future. But you know, all the Chinese stuff that is represented in the original games are all the stuff that they had back in the 80s and the 90s. So obviously, their forces are coming up to technological levels with their with Japan and with the U.S. and with Europe and all that kind of stuff. So this is where we would add the future forces. I'm separating them because I don't want I want the module to be able, or this version, this Vassal module to be, if you want to play the original Fifth Fleet, then you're going to find the original Fifth Fleet counters in the counter palette. But if you want to build a scenario of what could happen in the future, you will have modern counters available there. Lastly is a order of battle, just because some of this stuff can be, especially when you're doing big wars, you might go, where did I leave that carrier on the main map? And you go, oh, let's see here, where's, not the main, no, main map. Yeah, where's my B-52? Boom, it's over here on Guam. So, you know, nice little order of battle map or thing there. So that's it. That's pretty much the changes that came with my Fleet Battles module for Vassal, and how you use it, and all that kind of stuff. So we're at 28 minutes here on this video. I'm going to actually stop here, and then I'm going to restart with a new video that will actually be about our our game. And so give me a minute to shut this down, and I'm going to call this a tutorial video, and then we'll actually start the play-by-play of our first game turn of our 7th Fleet, Third World War. Okay, thanks for listening, guys.